we learned this week that the City of Vancouver has shuttered its equity office. Since 2020, that office has served as the city's central resource and support for equity policies and practices. And the city sent CBC a statement that says, in part, we believe it is more effective to further embed our EDI efforts into the city's operational departments versus maintaining a standalone function. Now, it confirmed closing the office will amount to savings of approximately $285,000. And this comes as Mayor Ken Sim expressed his ambitions to have a 0% tax increase for 2026, among other budget savings directives by his staff. Well, joining us in studio is one City Councillor, Lucy Maloney, is with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you for being here. $285,000 in savings overall. What do you make of the equity office being on the chopping block as a money-saving measure?
I think generally what we fund is what we prioritise in local government. So I'm concerned that this could indicate a downgrading of the importance of these issues in our city. I know that it's inconsistent with how we're treating some other officers. You know, I've heard from the majority on council how much they value having a particular officer in charge of business and First Nations issues and in urban Indigenous issues. We also heard that ABC wouldn't vote in favour of re-establishing the renter office, and I'm concerned that this indicates the relative importance ascribed to these issues by the ABC supermajority on council.
Well, their argument for the renter's office was that it really wasn't doing much. Their argument in this case is that they say this is part of the chaos created when we tried to bottom line our budget. Oh, no, they talked about this is being supported in other ways, that individual offices are supporting DEI policies already. Individual city departments are supporting those efforts already. And it doesn't, the central office is, I guess, redundant to some point of view.
Well, I guess that's, again, an inconsistent approach to different issues across the city. I hope that they're right. I hope it doesn't diminish our commitment to fairness and equity in our city, but I'm concerned that saving money in this particular area will downgrade the focus on it. You know, I'm worried about what's going to be on the chopping block next. Is the Office of Seniors going to be on the chopping block? Where do we stop? So do we have no offices dedicated to particular areas in the city, or do we choose what we value more than one thing over another?
Yeah, what role does the equity office actually play in city operations at this point?
I think it gives it did give a focus on making sure that there was focus across departments and coordination across departments, and that's a really valuable role to play. So I'm pretty concerned about what it means. I'm also very concerned that it's just another example of decisions being made behind closed doors. You know, we heard Ken Sim come out and say and reject the basis on which municipal governments work across BC, which is that we make decisions openly. This wasn't something I was consulted on, and I'm not aware of any of the non-ABC councillors being consulted on it. So I'm wondering why we're preemptively cutting important roles of the city ahead of the budget process.
Again, though, I mean, the city says the function of the EDI office has been basically embedded into the way the city does things. The City of Vancouver, I mean, in my experience over the years has been that it's been a real leader in diversity, inclusion, and equity, and especially when it comes to hiring practices and so on. It's a very, very diverse workforce that you've seen at City Hall for a very long time. Has this not just become embedded into the way they do things? Do you really need that office anymore?
Well, I hope that we don't, since we don't have it anymore, but that's it's an example of the chaotic decision making that I'm seeing in the lead up to this budget process. You know, we saw an amendment or a motion brought to help us consider a 2% property tax increase, a 1% property tax increase and a 0% property tax increase. And because I'm really concerned about affordability for the residents of Vancouver, I was happy to say, all right, well, let's look at what staff have to say about that. Since then, we've lost our city manager that was dealing with that and who was recommending a 5 to 7% property tax increase so that services and investment wouldn't be cut. And now we've got a motion that's coming to council brought by Ken Sim on the 8th of October saying zero means zero. It seems very performative. It doesn't seem to be well planned.
Do you think this is not thinking much about the city's finances or services, but thinking more about politics?
I'm very concerned that it's a pre-election budget. And I know what a post-election budget looks like for the ABC majority because we saw that the year after they were elected. We saw a 10.7% property tax increase. And I think that the residents of Vancouver would be rightly cynical to worry that we might get zero means zero the year before the election, but if ABC are re-elected, will we see another massive increase to make up for it with some excuse that is pulled out of thin air?
Well, I guess a good excuse would be that we're hosting the World Cup next year, and that's going to require a lot of money out of city coffers. And I guess the question would be, why do you choose that year to try to hold a property tax increase to zero?
Yes, well,
when you're obviously going to need, I mean, hosting the World Cup is going to cost the city and taxpayers a substantial amount of money.
And we've seen leaders of arts organisations recently come to council begging cap in hand for a tiny bit of money to help them survive through FIFA, help them do what they do that makes our city so vibrant and wonderful. And there was a strike and replace amendment by an ABC councillor that sent them packing with the office with an offer to set up another committee that duplicates one that already exists. So I'm very concerned.
Councillor, the city has been facing calls for more transparency when it comes to budgeting and its financial decisions in general. A recent example, Task Force Barrage, which was introduced this year, was going to cost an additional $5 million on top of the police budget. The police board wasn't even aware that the task force had been put together. Nobody really knows where the money came from because there isn't a really clear paper trail. What would you like to see from the mayor's office in terms of financial decision making?
I'd like to see more transparency, obviously. I mean, I am very concerned about the lack of process that came to light with that announcement and the fact that it didn't go through normal processes. I'm not even sure what the status of that that funding is. I'm super sympathetic about the need for public safety. I live downtown myself. I can see that businesses have been calling out for more help in that regard and they're being affected by it. And also, we need to make sure that we have transparency and openness about that. You know, Ken Sim came into power touting himself as being a business person that would use business efficiency processes to find cost savings and efficiencies. I haven't seen a lot of that. I'm concerned that he hasn't learnt a lesson from the clear message that was sent in the by-election that we need to focus more on prevention as well as simply reaction. And so I'm concerned with the budget coming up that we're going to lose even more prevention and we're only going to maintain response because it's been clearly flagged that we're not going to lose funding for emergency response, and that's great. I support that. However, when we lose funding for grants and social services and arts programs and the park board, we're going to lose people through the cracks. When we don't have prevention of homelessness, that's going to also be a huge issue.
Ken Sim is looking to find, as we said, savings in the budget. He wants the tax increase to be zero. Is that going to mean possible layoffs in other departments in the city? I
expect so. And it's even worse than you might think because we have to remember that we're having an unprecedented diminishment in in development charges.
Yeah.
We've seen construction grinding to a halt, and we know that that's going to be potentially a long-term issue. That's been a huge source of revenue for the city. So we've got a 0% property tax increase. I didn't see Ken Sim in Victoria advocating for a different funding model or more funding from the province. I was there trying to get funding for the things that Vancouver needs. And we've got less revenue coming in. I don't know how it works out, but, you know, when I was a business person, this wouldn't have made much sense, and it still doesn't.
Right now, you talked about fully funding emergency services. Right now, the VPD is projecting it's going to be over budget by about $8 million, almost $8 million. Do you expect that the city will cover that overage to keep the police department in balance?
Well, I guess thinking back to what happened during COVID when the VPD didn't want to accept the same funding cuts that every other department faced, I'm expecting we won't have much choice in the matter. And, you know, I recognise that since the terrible incident in the Lapu Lapu Festival, that it has been necessary to take further steps to ensure that Vancouverites stay safe, and that's cost money. I'm just concerned about losing so many other services and programs that Vancouverites value and rely on.
Councillor, thank you so much for coming in, taking the time with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lucy Maloney, One City Vancouver councillor, elected in a by-election earlier this year, as she mentioned.